Hey guys, Table here. Today we got a kind of an in-depth look at the Alaska for you. Einstein on the screen here. If you don't have this guy, number one, I would assume he'll be back next Halloween. Number two, I would run Kincaid for the heavy cruiser side of the equation. Norm Scott for the light cruiser side of the equation. Two games. First one on shards. This one we're going to be focusing on using the islands, which is going to be extremely important for this ship. Second game is on North. We'll talk more about that one when we get to it. Quick rundown of the stats that kind of stand out. Just shy of 55,000 HP. That's quite a bit of HP. We'll see how that stacks up to the other cruisers in legendary tiers they develop. 3x3 in terms of turrets, 305 millimeter guns, so pretty heavy hitting guns. 16 kilometer range, pretty far. I don't have mine set up for range in particular, so you can probably get that extended out if you want. Reload, 16.7. So we're talking Scharnhorst-esque reload. Turret traverse, I got 23 on mine. Mine has double traverse buff. So with Einstein, you're probably looking at a fairly lengthy turret traverse, I would guess, out of the box. HE damage, 4,300. Pretty high compared to tier 7s. 27% fire chance. AP damage, max damage, you got 9,600. That's for the Citadel shots. And then speed, not the fastest, 34.7 of mine. 850 turn circle, that's, looking at my tier 7s, that would be the second worst at that tier. Detection, 10.9. So that's factoring in a Macau influence on this, keep that in mind. So it's probably another kilometer on top of that if you don't want to run a stealth build. You do have a radar on this one, it's the Baltimore radar. So those are the kind of the stats that run out here. First up, though, what you want to look for in this ship, I think these little pieces of island that jut out like this, you'll see how we play this here. This is kind of one of those ships that those little terrain features are designed for. You can see it sticks out just enough for us to ram into it and stop, and then that'll allow us to fire those front two guns there and protect the bulk of our ship, especially from that Iowa that's in the back there. Those type of low-line island features you're going to be wanting to look for, and then nose in. You'll see we're not going to be taking a lot of damage from AP. If the Wichita was shooting AP, wouldn't be taking much damage. He is shooting HE, and then something like the Iowa. At that range, it's probably going to be coming down through the deck into the superstructure quite a bit. You're going to be taking damage there. Closer range, maybe you can get away with it. This is 32 millimeter plating on the front and presumably the back. So if they're hitting your hull, you can bounce pretty much everything except for the Amato, I believe, at least currently at the time of the making of this video. But getting that close with this ship can be difficult because any shots that hit you in the side are going to wreck you. We'll see at least one Citadel in this game coming up here. When I was researching the ship early on, it sounded like on the PC version the Citadel was very hard to hit on that version of the Alaska. Not the case here, so you do need to be very wary here. And I think this ship's role will become more defined as legendary tier becomes more populated with ships. Right now it's been a little bizarre just because most of the games you've been, maybe the only legendary tier ship. I'm starting to see a little bit more now. We were playing a few games earlier with a couple of community contributors who we'll see in the next game. And we were in a 3-man division in legendary tier, actually got 1 or 2 games, so there are more and more of these ships coming out, but it's still apt to be focused a lot, and this ship really doesn't do that well to be focused a lot. You need to be taking your engagements one at a time. Z23 pops up here. Now I'm going to back up, protect myself. We do have the HE loaded. Sonar used up. We use that to spot those torps. But I'm just adjusting my position just a little bit, so we're going to be able to scurry around here. I do pop the radar there out of it as a courtesy for my teammates. Looking back at this right now, I think I probably should have just held on to it for myself. You're going to get 2 salvos off at most with this radar. It'll probably be finishing up. So really you want to be ready to shoot, fire the radar, and then fire the shots. But we only needed 1 there. Took him out without any problem. 8,000 damage and wrecked every module on the ship. But here we're going to take a crossfire shot, and you can see we're starting at 43k, and I'm not even 100% sure what's shooting at me. Probably that thing at the southeast corner of B would be my guess. But I'm trying to push forward to get to the next island. This is kind of an island hopper. There we go, 15k. So wicked salvo there. I'm undetected now. I do want to catch this Wichita. he was causing me problems earlier. I want to repay that favor. And this thing, I've been talking about it a fair amount. This is the third video on the Alaska. But you can actually stick the front 2 turrets out and then remain undetected. The spotting point on your ship is the center of the ship. I believe it's the highest point towards the center of the ship. So, you know, you can keep yourself hidden by keeping your center of your ship behind the island. Stick those front 2 guns out, blast away. You won't become detected as long as you don't have someone from a different angle spotting you. So, something to consider. I don't know if we see any examples of that on these 2 games, but I do want to point that out because it is an important move. This is a very long ship. It's probably about as long as the Iowa, so you can get away with doing that a little bit. Here's one of the downsides, shooting at the Fletcher. Now that's a long-range cruiser shot to begin with, but the aim was decent, and you saw the dispersion just kind of go all around that ship. Is he running Vian? Who knows? You know, maybe his build contributed to that. But I see that a lot, trying to shoot these destroyers. You know, if you got that first one, the Z-23 close range, we're able to hit him pretty effectively. But anything, you know, 7, 10 kilometers, even long, you get longer than that, you're going to have a real hard time shooting those destroyers. So do have to keep that in mind. I think this would be a pretty good ship to play in a division. We played, like I mentioned earlier, a couple games tonight, and it did pretty well in that situation. But my kind of philosophy on this one is getting into these odd positions where you can catch ships unaware. It's not a high DPM ship, you know, we got that almost 17-second reload. And yes, if you get battleships or cruisers that are broadside to you and your shots connect, you can absolutely wreck those ships. But if the enemy team's angling, you're kind of forced to switch to HE at that point. Yeah, you're going to get some fires, but the DPM goes way down. In terms of doing raw damage, you know, if you said I'll pay you $1,000 to get a $200,000 or a 200K damage game, I would take the Kutuzov or maybe like a Megami as a second choice. This would not even come into my mind, at least not yet. I haven't had any massive barn burners. I've had a couple 2-3 games in the mid 100s, but I'm finding my success with this in terms of winning games is more kind of ambusher. I'm about to say battleship cruiser hybrid, which is kind of obnoxious because that's basically what it is. But in terms of, you know, holding down positions, that's what I usually talk about battleships roles being, holding down like a certain line, like a rook would in chess. And if someone dares to get in that field, then you go ahead and punish them. Same thing with this. If someone's flashing you broadside, you can absolutely punish them. If not, well, your tactics have to change. We're going to see kind of how effective this thing is next game. And I'm specifically talking about knocking out turrets, which is going to be an important play for legendary tier cruisers in general. But I think this Alaska is pretty good at it, and I think it's an important play for that ship. So that's why we're highlighting that second game. There we fired just a smidge too early in this Iowa, and we're going to see here a little bit of the wonkiness of these guns. These guns don't have your typical cruiser dispersion formula when you pull the trigger. I guess it's its own category, super cruiser. So it's like a step in between the battleships and the cruisers. And, you know, the guns aren't massively inaccurate, but I have maxed Einstein, who has accuracy boosts in slot 4. I also slotted Norm Scott in there. That wasn't part of my initial build. That's not how I was running my tech tree heavy cruisers with the Americans, but was getting a little frustrated with the dispersion early on, testing the ship, and went ahead and put him on there. So we basically have about as accurate of a build as you can possibly have on this thing, and you're still going to see some wonkiness, so keep that in mind. Here in the Iowa, though, when you get into this angled position like this, well, there's the end of that game. We'll see more of that against this John Bard coming up next game. But if you're really steeply angled at these ships, basically pointed directly at them or potentially directly away from them, and you're close range, they're going to have a hard time dealing damage to you with AP, I guess is the moral of that story. Here's the game on North. My fellow community contributors, like I mentioned, Hive Hound and Spotted Gecko are on the enemy team. They're on flank A, though, so we're not going to see them. You're going to see me extremely frustrated with this Udachi on my team. I'm going to try and not talk about him much, if at all. but it's going to be evident that I'm not exactly happy with his game. Let's just put it that way. Actually, both guys on my flank here are just... they're not helpful. Let's just put it that way. Or they're not doing what I need them to do to support me in my mind. And that's probably all I'm going to try and say on that. But here, we're going to try and open up. I want to cover C. Again, we have that little low line outcropping on this island that I'm heading towards here. This one's low enough that I can't really use it for cover. But you'll see the position I get in on there when we stop gawking at this screen here. But I basically line up on this so that I can cover anything pushing into C, but I'll remain undercover from ships that are way in the back. Usually battleships aren't going to push in too aggressively on this map, at least not right off the bat. So the idea is protect ourselves from the battleships while still give ourselves opportunities to shoot into destroyers or cruisers that move into sea. Much easier to do if someone on your team spots for you, but that's not always going to be the case. So nothing you can do about that. But again, when you're looking at the map design, these islands, anytime there's something very low that's sticking out here, it's an intentionally placed feature, and it's basically for you to nose up in. You can park right by it. I'm not that steeply angled here, but potentially we could be more steeply angled at these. I want to keep all the guns available to shoot at these ships that we're expecting here, like this Udachi. This one, we do get some shells on them, it looks like, but I think they either all clipped that island, or maybe some of them clipped the island, some of them went a little long. Either way, we didn't hit them with anything spectacular there. Switch over to HE, though. I do have my radar ready to go. We're going to pop the sonar first, though. We're expecting the Udachi to try and torp me, and, you know, that's decent damage, 4,000. But with as hard as these guns hit, you know, you kind of want to see some juicier shots once in a while. But again, this thing is just not specialized in killing destroyers. It just doesn't have the accuracy for it, so you're going to need some support. Holding the radar, though, because he's deploying his smoke, we want to get rid of this guy for sure. And going to go ahead and take one more shot at him before he disappears. Then he's actually going to get finished off, unbeknownst to me. Then I'm going to misuse the radar and fire it up even though he's not there. But that's just a little bit of an awareness issue on my part. There, he's I think he's killed on that shot right there, but I didn't notice at the time. So right now we would want to be switching to AP on this hipper. You can see on the map the hipper's angled, but not angled enough. These American cruisers and this ship, they have enhanced penetration angles. So ships can be more angled at you, they can be more angled away from you than normal, and those AP shells will still get in there. So I always try and recommend using that AP whenever you have the opportunity. You don't want to be too over-reliant on it, though. That's the part of the ship that I'm having problems with. I'm so, I don't know if desperate's the right word, but I'm so inclined to use the AP every chance I can get that I'm a little too stubborn. And if you fire a shot, like right here I got AP loaded, we're going to be trying to shoot this guy's guns, which is fine. We're not quite at the range to be doing that effectively. So maybe one or two salvos of HE as we're closing in. This Udachi, just check out this guy's awareness. This lightning's going to be tethered to him. You know, the guy gets in a rowboat, transfers between the two ships, gets on the Udachi, puts a crate full of TNT on there, lights the fuse, gets back on the rowboat, gets on his lightning, and then zooms off before the dude has any idea that there's a ship 0.2 kilometers away from him. So that's more than I said I was going to talk about it, but just watching this back is... let's just say I'm not over it yet. Anyway, we're going to assume at this point in time, you know, we got this Richelieu way in the back. He must be working on the California in the Bureau because he's trying to buff his Dewey up to at least a level 14, probably level 15. He's not available to do anything. Udachi, again, just sat there doing nothing. So at this point in time, I'm just assuming I'm dying, especially when the lightning starts piling on, trying to set fires on me here. But here's what we're talking about. Check out the angle against that John Bart. We're not pointed 100% at him, but we're just, 5-10 degrees to the left there. And then we're just going to charge him. He's going to have a really hard time hitting me with AP. I believe this guy mainly, if not 100% of the time, keeps HE loaded. But we're targeting these guns, and this is a play. This is an important battleship brawling play. This is going to be an important play for tier 7 tier or legendary tier cruisers for sure, because these guns are going to hit hard enough to actually damage a lot of turrets. And you're going to see here, we're going to pick this John Bart apart, and maybe I'll try and include just the last 2 seconds of this clip. You can see, despite my team struggling throughout most of the match, we actually end up winning the game, and it's because they kill everything but this John Bart, and they find him, and he has no guns left. So, this is just me basically practicing with this ship at this point in time, but it is an important play, and it's a play you can make against not just John Barts, not just Richelieu's, not just Vlad's that have those flat turrets, but you can target all sorts of manners of turrets in here and just keep hammering them until they go red and eventually black, and then they'll be knocked out permanently. That's a great way to cut down the enemy's DPM. Incoming damage to you, you can limit it by angling against them. Primarily in these brawling situations, you can angle and you can damage their guns. And when you take out one turret, this guy's DPM's cut down 50%. You take them both down, then he's going to rely on his secondaries, or he's going to try and ram you. So you basically render him ineffective. And again, we're going to try and maintain these really steep angles till I get kind of desperate here, trying to get that back. I'm trying to kill this guy, or grievously wound him at least, before his secondaries kill me. As we progress along the side of this guy, his secondaries are mostly all on the back of the ship, so you'll see as we cross the midway point of the ship, they'll start to tear us to shreds. There we get a 15k on 2 of the 3 turrets, and here will be another 5k. So this is a 20k salvo, no citadel shots, but point blank range. This thing can do damage, there's no doubt about it. It's just getting yourselves in situations where, number one, first and foremost, you're protecting yourself, because that's the main thing with this ship. You got to protect yourself first. And then as you're protecting yourself, you need to find these crossfire flanking shots. If you're hitting ships in the side, you'll rip them to shreds. If you're shooting them nose in or angled ships, your DPM is not that great. You're not going to be probably out-trading mini cruisers as the legendary tier develops. Like take the Zao, for instance, I believe will be the Japanese legendary tier cruiser. I'm excited for that one. You guys know I love the Japanese cruisers, but I'm expecting to be doing a lot more damage in this one. Frankly, my average damage in this ship after, let's say, 25 games is probably lower than all my tier 7 cruisers' average damage. A couple reasons for that. Number one, a lot of the games have been 5, 6, 7v7s. They've been goofy games, short-filled, but, this week the games have been a little bit more full. Still not having as many barn murders as I would, percentage-wise. Number two, people are focusing me a lot because, you're one of the legendary tier ships, and they're shooting at you, which I hope the player base as a whole will kind of take the moment to realize how valuable it is to shoot the up-tiered ships. Like, if you're in a tier 6, tier 7 battle, and you can choose between killing tier 7s or tier 6s, try and kill the tier 7s first. Just because it doesn't have a star on it, for that match, it's just as powerful as legendary tier ships are in a tier 7/legendary tier ship game. So that's an important point too. Hopefully this will kind of train people to get into that mindset. But those two factors, maybe I'm just not that good at the ship as well, but I think that's the main contributing factor for why I haven't had a lot of huge damage games in this one. Anyway, I thought that would give you guys a couple of looks at important aspects of this ship's gameplay. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. New to the channel, consider subscribing. A lot of World of Warships coming all the time. Questions, comments, leave them below. I do love to hear from you guys. And we'll see y'all later. All right, peace.